The Roman road stretched endlessly through the dense Virginia forest, its ancient stones cracked and overgrown with moss that spoke of years of neglect. Marcia pulled her woolen cloak tighter against the autumn chill, her leather satchel heavy with herbs and tinctures that clinked softly with each step. The capital was still 3 days' journey away, and already the sun hung low between the towering oaks, casting long shadows that danced like specters across her path. She had been a healer for 12 years now, ever since her mother passed the knowledge to her, along with the silver pendant she wore, a caduceus wreathed in laurel leaves, symbol of their calling. In that time, Marcia had seen much. Fevers that burned through entire villages, wounds festering with poison, children born too early into an unforgiving world. Yet she had also witnessed miracles, life returning to bodies that seemed lost, breath-filling lungs that had fallen still. Her faith in the healing arts was absolute, even when her faith in men had long since wavered. The cry reached her ears just as twilight began its descent. At first, she thought it merely the wind moving through the branches, but then it came again, a low, agonized sound that raised the hairs on the back of her neck. Marcia hesitated. The forest was dangerous after dark, filled with bandits and wild animals that cared nothing for a lone woman's safety. But the sound came once more, weaker now, and she found her feet carrying her off the road before her mind could form an objection. Through a tangle of blackberry bushes and past a fallen elm, she discovered the source. A wolf lay sprawled in a small clearing, its gray and silver coat matted with blood that looked black in the fading light. 3 wooden spears protruded from its body, hunter's weapons, crude but effective. The beast's flanks heaved with labored breathing, and foam flecked its muzzle. Yet what stopped Marcia's heart was not the creature's suffering, but its eyes. They were golden, not the amber yellow of a normal wolf, but pure gold, like coins fresh from the mint, gleaming with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Those eyes fixed upon her as she approached, and in them she saw not animal rage but something far more unsettling, recognition, and perhaps even resignation. "Peace, creature," Marcia whispered, lowering herself slowly to her knees. The wolf's muscles tensed and a low growl rumbled in its throat, but it made no move to attack. "I will not harm you." She knew this was madness. Wolves were killers, especially wounded ones driven by pain and fear. Yet her healer's instinct overpowered caution. Setting down her satchel, she withdrew a flask of water and a bundle of clean linen. The wolf watched her every movement, its golden gaze never wavering, its breath coming in ragged gasps that spoke of internal bleeding. "I must remove these," she said softly, as if the creature could understand her words. Perhaps it did, for when she reached for the first spear, the wolf merely closed its eyes and turned its massive head away, as though giving permission. The first spear came free with a sickening wet sound. Blood welled up immediately, and Marcia pressed a cloth firmly against the wound. The wolf's body shuddered, but it made no sound, no attempt to snap at her with those powerful jaws that could have torn her throat out in an instant. She worked quickly, her fingers moving with the practiced efficiency of long experience. The second spear had lodged between ribs but missed the lung, a blessing. The third had gone clean through the shoulder, damaging muscle but no vital organs. As she worked, night fell completely around them. Marcia tore strips from her own cloak, the fine blue wool that had cost her 3 months' wages, and bound the wounds tightly. She crushed yarrow leaves and comfrey root between her palms, mixing them with honey to make a poultice that she pressed into each injury. The wolf bore it all in silence, occasionally opening those strange golden eyes to watch her face. "You're not like other wolves, are you?" she murmured, smoothing the fur along its neck. The creature was massive, larger than any wolf she had ever heard of, with paws the size of a man's hands. Its coat, where not matted with blood, was beautiful, silver gray with darker markings along the spine, like storm clouds moving across a winter sky. When she finished, Marcia sat back on her heels, exhausted. The wolf's breathing had eased somewhat, though it was still shallow. She knew it should not survive. The wounds were too severe, the blood loss too great, yet something in those golden eyes spoke of a will that refused to surrender to death. "I have done what I can," she said quietly. "The rest is in the hands of the gods." She should have left then. The road was still visible through the trees, and she could make camp in a safer place, perhaps find an inn before full darkness fell. But looking at the wounded creature, so alone and vulnerable in the forest night, Marcia found she could not abandon it. She gathered dry wood for a fire, using flint and steel to coax flames from the tinder. The light pushed back the darkness, creating a small circle of warmth and safety. The wolf watched her prepare her own meager camp, a bedroll spread on the ground, a piece of hard bread and dried meat for her supper, water from her flask to wash down the simple meal. She kept the fire between herself and the creature, a precaution that seemed somehow insulting given what she had just done. Yet survival required some measure of caution, no matter how gentle those golden eyes appeared. "I am called Marcia," she said into the darkness, feeling foolish for speaking to an animal. "I travel to the capital, to the Emperor's city, where I have been summoned to serve in the hospitals there. It is a great honor, though I confess I am frightened. I have never left my village before, never seen the great marble buildings or the forum where the Senate meets." The wolf's ear twitched, following the sound of her voice. In the firelight, its eyes seemed to glow like small moons. "Do you have a home?" she continued, pulling her tattered cloak around her shoulders. "A pack that searches for you? I wonder what you have done to anger hunters so. Taken their sheep, perhaps, or threatened their children. And yet," she paused, studying the creature thoughtfully, "and yet there is something about you that speaks of more than simple beast. My grandmother used to tell stories of shapeshifters, of wolves that were once men, cursed by witches or gods. I always thought them merely tales to frighten children." The wolf closed its eyes, as if weary beyond measure. Marcia watched the rise and fall of its chest, counting the breaths, measuring the strength of its heartbeat by the pulse visible in its neck. Against all odds, it seemed to be stabilizing. The bleeding had stopped, and though the wounds were grievous, they were clean and properly bound. Sleep eventually claimed her, though she had not meant to rest. The forest night sang its ancient song around her. Crickets and owls, the rustle of small creatures in the undergrowth, the whisper of wind through 10,000 leaves. The fire burned low, shadows lengthening and shifting like living things. And the wolf, with its strange golden eyes, kept watch over the healer who had saved its life, even as the moon rose full and bright above the trees, casting everything in silver light that seemed almost sacred, as if the gods themselves were bearing witness to this unexpected meeting on a forgotten road in the American wilderness. Marcia woke to silence. It was the kind of silence that speaks louder than any sound, complete, absolute, as if the forest itself held its breath. The fire had died to embers, glowing faintly in the pre-dawn darkness, and a mist had crept in during the night, wrapping everything in ghostly white. She sat up slowly, her body stiff from sleeping on the hard ground, and reached instinctively for the knife she kept in her belt. The wolf was gone. Where the great beast had lain, there was only flattened grass and dark stains of blood, already turning brown in the cold air. The bandages she had so carefully applied lay scattered and torn, as if ripped away by desperate hands rather than claws. Marcia rose to her feet, her heart pounding as she scanned the clearing. The mist obscured everything beyond a few yards, turning the familiar forest into an alien landscape of shadow and vapor. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence swallowed her words without echo. Then she heard it, breathing, not the panting of an animal, but the deep measured breaths of a man. It came from behind her, near the oak tree at the edge of the clearing. Marcia turned slowly, her hand tightening on the knife handle. He stood in the shadow of the great oak, leaning against its trunk as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. A man, tall and powerfully built, wearing nothing but torn trousers that hung low on his hips. His chest was bare, revealing a landscape of scars, old wounds that crisscrossed his torso like a map of violence and suffering. But what seized Marcia's attention, what made her breath catch in her throat, were the 3 fresh wounds on his body, positioned exactly where she had removed the spears from the wolf, and his eyes, golden eyes that caught the faint light of the dying fire and reflected it back like mirrors. "You saved me," he said quietly, his voice rough as if from long disuse, "but you should have let me die." Marcia's mind raced, trying to reconcile what she saw with what she knew to be possible. The wounds matched perfectly, shoulder, side, and flank. The blood on the bandages was the same blood that now seeped slowly from the man's injuries. And those eyes, there could be no mistake. "You were the wolf," she said, not quite a question, not quite a statement. Her grandmother's tales suddenly seemed far less fanciful than they had mere hours ago. The man, if man he truly was, nodded slowly. He pushed away from the tree and took a step forward, wincing as the movement pulled at his wounds. In the growing light, Marcia could see him more clearly. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair that fell past his shoulders, and a face that might have been handsome had it not been so marked by pain and exhaustion. His body, despite its scars, was that of a warrior, muscled and powerful, built for battle. "My name is Cassian," he said, moving closer with careful steps, "and I am both the wolf you saved and the man who stands before you now. A curse binds me to both forms, and I cannot escape either one." Marcia found herself unable to move, frozen between fear and fascination. Every instinct of self-preservation screamed at her to run, to flee back to the road and never look back. Yet the healer in her noted the pale cast to his skin, the tremor in his limbs, the way he favored his left side where the deepest wound still bled. "You're injured," she heard herself say, the words absurd given the circumstances. "You should not be standing." A ghost of a smile touched Cassian's lips. "I have survived worse. The wounds of silver and iron heal slowly for one such as me, but they do heal." He lowered himself carefully to sit on a fallen log, his breath hissing between his teeth. "Though I confess your skill has kept me alive when I should have perished." The hunters' spears were meant to kill, and they nearly succeeded. "Why were they hunting you?" Marcia asked, finding her voice at last. She remained standing, maintaining distance between them, her knife still in hand, though she knew it would be useless against a creature that could transform into a massive wolf. Cassian's golden eyes grew distant, shadowed by memories she could only imagine. "Because of what I am. Because of what I have done." He looked down at his scarred hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. "I was a soldier once, in the legions that served the Emperor. I fought in the northern campaigns, against the tribes that resisted Rome's rule. I was good at killing, too good. My commanders praised me, gave me honors and gold, sent me into battle after battle because I always returned victorious." He paused, and in that pause Marcia heard the weight of untold horrors. "But war changes a man," Cassian continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "It makes a beast of him, strips away everything human until only rage remains. I became that beast long before the gods made it literal. In one battle, in one moment of blind fury, I slaughtered not just enemy warriors, but their families, women, children, elders who had surrendered, who posed no threat. I was covered in their blood, and I felt nothing." Marcia's hand trembled slightly, but she did not look away from those golden eyes. "The gods saw what I had done," Cassian said, "or perhaps it was a witch among the dying, cursing me with her last breath. I have never known which. But when I woke the next morning, I was in the form of a wolf, and I understood with perfect clarity that this was my punishment. I would bear the shape of the beast I had become, would know both forms and belong to neither, until I could pay the debt I owed to those innocent souls." "How long?" Marcia asked. "How long have you been cursed?" 7 years. Cassian looked up at the sky, where the first hint of dawn was beginning to paint the clouds pink and gold. 7 years of running, of hiding, of trying to find redemption in a world that offers none. The wolf wants only to survive, to hunt, to follow its instincts. The man wants only to die, to end the suffering and the guilt. I am caught between them, belonging to neither world." He stood again, moving with more steadiness now, and took another step toward her. Marcia forced herself to stand her ground, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "The curse is spreading," Cassian said, and now she could hear the desperation beneath his controlled tone. "Each day, it becomes harder to return to this form. The wolf grows stronger, more dominant. Soon, I fear, I will transform one final time and never return. I will be only beast, with no memory of the man I was, condemned to live as an animal until some hunter's arrow finds my heart." "Then why do you say I should have let you die?" Marcia demanded. "If you face such a fate, would death not be a mercy?" Cassian stopped a few feet from her, close enough now that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes were not uniform but swirled like molten metal. "Because there is a price to breaking the curse," he said softly. "The witch, or the gods, made it clear in the visions that plague me. Only the touch of one who heals without fear, who sees the beast and saves it anyway, can break the binding. But that same person becomes bound to me, their fate tied to mine. If I die, they die. If I transform, their life is forfeit." Understanding dawned like cold water. "And by saving you, you have become that person," Cassian finished. "Your touch, your healing, your mercy shown to a wounded creature without thought of reward or safety. These things have woven your life into mine. I can feel it, like a thread connecting us. I tried to leave while you slept, to run far from here so you would not learn the truth, but the curse pulled me back, would not let me go more than 100 yards from where you lay. Marcia's mind reeled. This could not be happening. She was a simple healer, traveling to the capital to serve in hospitals, to live a quiet life of service and purpose. She was not meant for curses and transformations, for wolves that became men and destinies that intertwined like rope. There must be a way to break it, she said, hearing the edge of panic in her own voice. Curses can be undone. I have read of such things in the old texts, heard stories. Stories, Cassian interrupted gently. The same stories that said such creatures as I did not exist. Yet here I stand. He spread his arms, presenting himself in all his scarred, cursed reality. I have searched for 7 years, consulted every wise woman and hedge witch from here to the frontier. None could help. The curse is absolute, and now you are part of it. The sun broke over the horizon, sending shafts of golden light through the mist. In that light, Cassian seemed to shimmer slightly, his form becoming translucent for just a moment before solidifying again. He gasped, doubling over in pain. Dawn, he gritted out. The transformation. It comes with the sun. Marcia watched in horror and fascination as his body began to change. His bones cracked and reformed, his skin rippling as fur began to emerge. But unlike the wolf she had saved, this transformation was agonizing to witness, as if his body fought against the change, even as it occurred. Run, Cassian managed to say, his voice becoming a growl. When I am fully changed, I may not remember. Run. But Marcia did not run. She stood frozen, watching as the man became beast once more, as golden eyes blazed in a wolf's face, as powerful muscles bunched beneath silver-gray fur. The wolf that had been Cassian stood before her, panting, its wounds still visible through the fur, and for a long moment they simply stared at each other. Then the wolf turned and loped into the forest, disappearing into the morning mist like a ghost, leaving Marcia alone in the clearing with a dying fire, a torn cloak, and the terrifying knowledge that her life had just been irrevocably changed by a single act of mercy on a forgotten road. Marcia did not continue to the capital that day. She told herself it was because she needed rest, because the events of the night had left her exhausted and confused, because traveling while her mind was in such turmoil would be dangerous. But the truth, which she acknowledged only in the quietest corner of her thoughts, was that she could not bring herself to leave. The invisible thread Cassian had spoken of, she could feel it now, a faint pull in her chest like a compass needle seeking north, always pointing toward wherever he had gone. She rebuilt the fire and sat beside it as the sun climbed higher, trying to make sense of what she had witnessed. Shapeshifters were the stuff of legend, tales told to entertain or frighten, not things that existed in the solid, rational world she had always known. Yet she had seen the transformation with her own eyes, had watched a man's body twist and reform into that of a wolf in a process that seemed to cause him excruciating pain, and now her fate was tied to his. The thought terrified her. Around midday, movement at the edge of the clearing caught her attention. The wolf emerged from the undergrowth, moving with the cautious grace of a wild animal. It carried something in its jaws, a rabbit, freshly killed. The creature approached slowly, as if uncertain of its welcome, and dropped the rabbit at the edge of the fire's warmth before retreating several paces. Marcia stared at the offering, understanding its meaning. The wolf, Cassian, was trying to provide for her, to contribute to their survival in the only way his current form allowed. It was a strangely touching gesture from a creature that should have been purely savage. "Thank you," she said softly, and the wolf's ears pricked forward at her voice. Those golden eyes watched her with an intensity that seemed far too intelligent for an animal. She prepared the rabbit, skinning and cleaning it with practiced efficiency, then roasted it over the fire. The wolf lay down at the clearing's edge, never taking its eyes from her. When the meat was cooked, Marcia tore off a portion and tossed it toward the creature. The wolf caught it in midair and swallowed it in 2 bites, but made no move to come closer or demand more. "Can you understand me?" Marcia asked, settling back against a log with her own portion of food. "When you are in this form, is the man still present, or is there only the wolf?" The creature tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost human in its curiosity. Then, Deliberately, it bowed its head once, a clear nod of affirmation. A chill ran down Marcia's spine. You can understand. The man is still there, trapped inside. Another nod. But you cannot speak, cannot control the transformation. The wolf's eyes closed briefly, a gesture of confirmation and perhaps resignation. They remained that way through the afternoon, woman and wolf, separated by the width of a small clearing, yet bound by forces neither fully understood. Marcia found herself studying the creature, noting how it never truly relaxed, how its ears constantly swiveled toward every sound in the forest, how it would occasionally rise and pace the perimeter of the clearing as if keeping guard. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Marcia saw the wolf's body begin to tense, saw the way it rose to its feet and moved further from the fire, as if anticipating what was to come. She understood then that Cassian knew exactly when the transformation would occur, could feel it approaching like a storm on the wind. The change at dusk was no less horrifying than the one at dawn. The wolf's body convulsed, bones breaking and reforming with sounds that made Marcia's stomach turn. Fur receded into skin, paws elongated into hands and feet, the muzzle shortened into a human face contorted with agony. Within moments, Cassian knelt on the forest floor, gasping for breath, his body slick with sweat despite the cooling air. Marcia rushed to him without thinking, her healer's instinct overriding caution. She draped her remaining cloak over his naked shoulders and supported him as tremors racked his frame. "Easy," she murmured, the same tone she used with fevered patience. "Breathe slowly. Let the pain pass." "It never passes," Cassian managed to say through gritted teeth. "It only recedes, waiting for the next dawn, the next dusk, twice each day, every day, for 7 years. When the worst had passed, Cassian sat back, pulling the cloak tighter around himself. In the fading light, his face looked haggard, older than it had that morning. The wounds she had treated the night before were already healing at an unnatural rate, the flesh knitting together in a way that defied everything she knew about the human body. "You did not run," he said quietly. "I could not," Marcia replied. "Even if I wanted to, I feel pulled back to you, like a fish on a line." Cassian nodded grimly. "The binding grows stronger with each passing hour. Soon you will find it painful to be even 50 paces from me. Our lives have become entangled in a way that cannot easily be undone." He looked at her with those unsettling golden eyes. "You showed mercy to a dying creature, and this is how the gods reward you." "Then tell me everything," Marcia said firmly. "If my fate is bound to yours, I deserve to know what that truly means." "You spoke of the curse spreading. Explain." Cassian was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire as if seeing his past written in the flames. "When I was first cursed, 7 years ago, the transformations came only with the full moon. Once a month, for 3 nights, I would become the wolf. It was manageable. I could plan around it, hide myself away, ensure I hurt no one." His hands clenched into fists. "But curses are like poison in the blood. They spread, they grow stronger. After the first year, it began happening twice a month, then every week. Now, as you have seen, it occurs twice daily, at dawn and dusk, when the world stands between light and darkness, neither fully day nor fully night. The wolf grows stronger with each transformation, and the man grows weaker." "What happens when the wolf becomes stronger than the man?" Marcia asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Then I will transform one final time and never return to this shape," Cassian said flatly. "The man will be lost forever, drowned beneath the beast. I will become fully wolf, with no memory of my human life, no ability to reason or speak or feel anything but animal instinct." He turned to face her directly. "And you, bound to me by the curse, will share that fate. I will become a wolf as well?" Marcia's voice came out as barely a whisper. "No," Cassian said, "not a wolf, but you will be bound to the wolf as its companion, unable to leave its side, unable to return to human society. You will live wild in the forests, following the beast, aging and dying as humans do, but trapped forever in a life of exile. That is the price of the binding. The healer who saves the cursed creature shares its exile from the human world." Horror washed through Marcia like ice water. Her life, her calling, her journey to the capital to serve in the great hospitals, all of it would be lost. She would become nothing more than a wild woman haunting the forests, companion to a beast that had once been a man. "How long?" she demanded. "How long until this happens?" "I do not know," Cassian admitted. Days, perhaps, maybe a week, but not longer. I can feel it. Each time I return to this form, it becomes harder. The wolf fights to stay dominant. Soon it will win that fight, and I will be gone. There must be a way to break the curse, Marcia said desperately. Some condition that would end it. If there is, I have not found it in 7 years of searching. Cassian's voice was heavy with defeat. The gods or the witch who cursed me spoke of a debt that must be paid. The innocent blood I spilled must be balanced, but I do not know what that means. I have saved lives, protected the weak, tried to atone for what I did. Nothing has worked. He stood and walked to the edge of the clearing, his back to her. Some believe only death can end such curses, the death of the one who cast it. But I do not even know if my curse came from a witch or from the gods themselves. How does one kill a god? Marcia's mind raced through every story she had ever heard, every scrap of lore about curses and their breaking. The old tales speak of conditions, she said slowly. True love, supreme sacrifice, impossible quests completed. Tales, Cassian said bitterly. I have chased every tale, every rumor, every whisper of hope. All have led nowhere. He turned back to her, and in his golden eyes she saw the depths of his despair. I am sorry, Marcia. You deserved better than this. But we are bound now, and all I can offer is to make your exile as bearable as possible when the time comes. I do not accept that, Marcia said, standing to face him. There is always a way. We simply have not found it yet. Cassian smiled sadly. You have a few days to believe that. But when the transformation comes, and the wolf does not let the man return, you will understand. Some fates cannot be fought. They can only be endured. 3 days had passed since Marcia learned the truth of her binding to Cassian, and in that time they had made their way deeper into the wilderness, following old hunting trails that few travelers knew. Each transformation became more violent, lasted longer, and left Cassian weaker when he finally returned to human form. The wolf was winning, and both of them knew it. They had made camp in a shallow cave overlooking a valley with a clear view of the road below. It was Cassian, in his brief hours of humanity, who first spotted the dust cloud rising in the distance, too large to be a single traveler, too organized to be a merchant caravan. Soldiers, he said grimly, shading his eyes against the afternoon sun. Roman legionaries by the formation. At least 20 men, maybe more. Marcia felt her stomach tighten with fear. Why would soldiers be out here? We are far from any settlement. Cassian's jaw clenched. They are hunting, and I would wager everything I once owned that they are hunting me. He turned from the cave entrance and began gathering their meager supplies. We need to move, now. But you will transform at dusk, Marcia protested. That is less than 2 hours away. If we are traveling when it happens, then we will deal with it, Cassian interrupted. But if we stay here, they will find us. Someone in that village must have seen us, must have recognized me or the wolf. The Emperor has had a price on my head for years. The Wolf of the Valley, they call me. A deserter, a monster, a threat to Rome's order. They will not stop until they have my head mounted on a pike in the Forum. They fled through the forest like ghosts, moving swiftly but carefully, leaving as little trail as possible. Cassian led them through streams to hide their scent, over rocky ground that would not hold footprints, through dense thickets that would slow any pursuit. But even as they ran, Marcia could see the tension building in his body, the way his hands began to tremble, the golden glow intensifying in his eyes. The transformation caught them in a narrow ravine as the sun touched the horizon. Cassian had just enough time to press his pack into Marcia's hands before his body convulsed, and the change took him. She watched helplessly as man became beast, as the wolf emerged with a howl that echoed off the ravine walls, a howl that would lead their pursuers straight to them. The wolf stood before her, panting, its golden eyes wild with the pain of transformation. For a moment, Marcia feared it would not recognize her, that the beast had finally won and Cassian was truly gone. But then the wolf moved to her side, pressing its large body against her legs in a gesture that was almost protective, and she knew the man still endured within. We have to keep moving, she whispered, running her hand through the wolf's thick fur. Can you lead us? The wolf's ears swiveled backward, toward the sound of distant voices and the baying of hounds. The soldiers had tracking dogs. Their escape had just become infinitely more difficult. What followed was a nightmare of running through darkening forest, stumbling over roots and rocks, branches tearing at Marcia's clothes and skin. The wolf stayed close, sometimes ranging ahead to find the safest path, sometimes circling back to ensure she followed. She could hear the pursuit growing closer, the shouts of men, the excited barking of dogs, the crash of soldiers moving through underbrush with less care for stealth than for speed. They emerged into a clearing where ancient stones stood in a circle, remnants of some pre-Roman temple long abandoned to the forest. The wolf stopped, hackles rising, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Marcia looked back and saw a torchlight flickering through the trees. They were surrounded. Soldiers poured into the clearing from three sides, torches held high, spears and swords gleaming in the firelight. At their head rode an officer on a black horse, his armor marking him as a centurion of the legions. His face was hard, weathered by years of campaign, and his eyes fixed on the wolf with the intensity of a man who had finally cornered his quarry. "The wolf of the valley," the centurion announced, his voice carrying authority. 7 years we have hunted you. 7 years of reports. Livestock slaughtered, travelers attacked, villages living in fear. Your reign of terror ends tonight. No. Marcia stepped forward, placing herself between the wolf and the soldiers. You are wrong. He has done nothing. He is a monster. The centurion finished coldly. Step aside, woman. That creature is an enemy of Rome, declared outlaw by imperial decree. Anyone who aids it shares its fate. The wolf moved forward, positioning itself in front of Marcia now, protecting her from the soldiers. Its lips curled back, revealing fangs that gleamed white in the torchlight. The soldiers formed a tighter circle, spears leveled, ready to strike at the first order. You risk your life for a beast, the centurion said, addressing Marcia directly. Whatever you think you know, whatever it has made you believe, that creature is death wrapped in fur. It has killed before and will kill again. Move aside, or we will go through you to reach it. Marcia's mind raced. She could see the determination in the soldiers' faces, could see the hunting dogs straining at their leashes, could see the spears pointed at the wolf's heart. In minutes, perhaps seconds, they would attack, and Cassian, trapped in wolf form, unable to speak or explain or plead his case, would die. And if he died, the curse dictated that she would die as well. But more than fear for her own life, she felt a fierce protectiveness for the creature beside her. She had seen the man within the wolf, had heard his story, understood his suffering. He was not a mindless beast, not a monster to be hunted down like vermin. He was a man paying an impossible price for his sins, struggling every moment to hold on to his humanity against a curse that sought to strip it away. He is not what you think, Marcia said, her voice stronger now. Yes, he is a wolf, but he is also a man cursed by the gods for crimes he has already paid for 1,000 times over. He protects. He does not attack. He has harmed no one in these forests. The decree is absolute, the centurion replied. The wolf dies tonight. This is your final warning. Step aside. The wolf growled, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. Its muscles bunched, preparing to fight, to sell its life dearly. Marcia could feel its heartbeat through their bond, could sense its resignation. Cassian knew he could not win this battle, but he would fight anyway to buy her a chance to escape. But Marcia did not move. She stood firm, her hand resting on the wolf's head, and spoke words that surprised even herself. Then you will have to kill me first, because I will not abandon him. The centurion's expression hardened. He raised his hand, preparing to give the order to attack. The soldiers tensed, spears ready. The hounds barked and snarled, scenting blood. In the ancient stone circle, surrounded by torchlight and Roman steel, Marcia and the wolf stood together, bound by curse and choice, preparing to face whatever came. And in that moment, as the centurion's hand began to fall, as death seemed certain and inevitable, something extraordinary happened, something that would change everything. The centurion's hand fell, the command to attack forming on his lips. When the moon broke through the clouds overhead, not the pale crescent that had hung in the sky moments before, but full and brilliant, impossibly bright, as if the heavens themselves had decided to bear witness to what happened next. The wolf beside Marcia convulsed, but not with the usual rhythm of transformation. This was different, violent in a new way, as if two forces battled within the creature's body. The soldiers hesitated, uncertain, their spears wavering as they watched the beast writhe and howl, a sound of such anguish that even the hardened centurion's expression flickered with something like pity. "Hold," he commanded, raising his hand. The soldiers froze, though their weapons remained trained on the wolf. Marcia dropped to her knees beside the creature, her hands finding its fur even as its body twisted and spasmed. She could feel it through their bond, the wolf and the man, locked in a final battle for dominance. The curse had reached its culmination. One would emerge victorious, and the other would be lost forever. "Fight," she whispered urgently, leaning close to the wolf's ear. "Cassian, I know you can hear me. Fight for yourself. Fight to come back." The wolf's golden eyes found hers, and in them she saw something that broke her heart. Acceptance. Cassian had given up. He had fought for 7 years, through hundreds of transformations, through pain and loneliness and despair, and he had finally reached the end of his strength. The wolf would win because the man no longer had the will to resist. "No," Marcia said, fiercely gripping the fur tighter. "No, you do not get to surrender. Not now. Not after dragging me into this, binding my fate to yours, making me care about what happens to you." Tears streamed down her face, hot and angry. "You told me the curse said only one who heals without fear could break it. Well, I healed you. I am here unafraid, and I am not letting you go." The soldiers murmured among themselves, confused by the scene before them. This was not how wolf hunts typically proceeded. The centurion watched in silence, his hand still raised, his order to attack suspended by curiosity, and something he could not quite name. Marcia pressed her forehead against the wolf's head, feeling its pain as if it were her own. Through their bond, she could sense the battle raging inside, the wolf's primal fury and desire for dominance, the man's exhaustion and resignation. She understood then what the curse truly required, what 7 years of suffering had not taught Cassian. The curse could not be broken by suffering alone, by paying a debt through pain and isolation. It required something more, something Cassian had not allowed himself in all these years. It required him to believe he deserved to be saved. "Listen to me," Marcia said, her voice breaking. "I know what you did. I know about the innocents you killed, about the rage that consumed you, about the blood on your hands. You have told yourself for 7 years that you deserve this curse, that it is justice for your crimes. But Cassian, you have paid, you have suffered, and suffering without end is not justice. It is just cruelty." The wolf's body shuddered, and for a moment the spasms seemed to lessen. "The gods did not curse you to destroy you," Marcia continued, speaking words she only half believed but desperately needed him to hear. "They cursed you to teach you, to show you what it means to be beast instead of man, to strip away everything until you understood the value of your humanity. You have learned that lesson. I see it in how you hunt only for food, how you protect rather than attack, how you fight to hold on to yourself even when it would be easier to let go." She pulled back to look into those golden eyes, her hands framing the wolf's face. "You are not the monster they say you are. You are a man who made terrible mistakes and has spent 7 years trying to atone. That is enough. It has to be enough. So fight, Cassian, not because you have to, but because you deserve to, because your life has value beyond your sins, because I am telling you, I, who have bound my fate to yours, that you are worth saving." The moonlight seemed to intensify, bathing the stone circle in silver radiance. The wolf's eyes locked on Marcia's, and she saw the moment when something shifted, when the resignation gave way to the faintest spark of hope. The man was listening. The man was fighting back. "Remember who you are," she whispered, placing her hand over the wolf's heart, feeling its rapid beat beneath fur and muscle. "Remember mercy. Remember kindness. Remember every moment in these 7 years when you chose to be human, even in beast form. Remember that you are Cassian, not the wolf of the valley. You are a man who made mistakes, but who is more than those mistakes. Now come back to me." The transformation that followed was unlike any that had come before. Instead of the agonizing twist from one form to another, there was a moment of perfect stillness, as if the world itself held its breath. The moonlight seemed to flow into the wolf's body, silver light filling it from within, and then the beast was simply gone, not changed, but dissolved, like mist burning away in sunlight. And in its place knelt Cassian, fully human, his golden eyes wide with shock and wonder. But something was different. The wounds that had marked his body, both the fresh injuries from the hunter's spears and the old scars from countless battles, were gone. His skin was unmarked, whole, as if he had been born anew. And when he looked at his hands, turning them over in the moonlight, he saw they no longer bore the faint shimmer that had marked them since the curse began. "It is broken," he said, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "The curse, it is broken." Marcia threw her arms around him, not caring about his nakedness or the soldiers watching or anything, except the overwhelming relief that flooded through her. She could still feel their bond, but it had changed. No longer a chain binding them together, but something gentler, warmer, like a thread of gold connecting their hearts. The centurion dismounted slowly, approaching the circle with caution. He studied Cassian for a long moment, then looked at Marcia. "What witchcraft is this?" he demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Not witchcraft," Marcia said, rising to her feet and helping Cassian stand. "Justice, mercy, whatever you wish to call it." She faced the centurion squarely. "The wolf of the valley is dead. The curse is broken. The man before you is Cassian, formerly of the legions, who has paid his debt to the gods and to Rome. The decree," the centurion began. "The decree was for a monster," Marcia interrupted. "Do you see a monster here? Or do you see a man who has suffered 7 years of punishment and emerged on the other side? Your emperor demands justice, not mindless vengeance. The wolf is dead. Let the man live." The centurion was silent for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Then he turned to his soldiers. "Lower your weapons," he commanded. To Cassian he said, "The wolf of the valley is dead. I will report this to the emperor. What he chooses to do with Cassian of the legions is his decision, not mine." He paused, then added more quietly, "But if I were you, I would not return to the capital. Some debts once paid are best left in the past." He remounted his horse and gestured to his men. "We leave. There is nothing more to hunt here." The soldiers filed out of the clearing, taking their torches and hounds with them, until Marcia and Cassian stood alone in the stone circle beneath the impossible moon. Cassian sank to his knees, trembling not with transformation but with emotion, relief, gratitude, and something that might have been joy. "You saved me," he said, looking up at Marcia. "Again, not just my body, but everything. You made me believe I deserved to be saved." Marcia knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. "We saved each other," she corrected gently. "You taught me that mercy is not weakness, that healing sometimes means fighting for someone even when they have given up on themselves." Above them, the moon began to fade back to its natural size, the silver light receding. But in the stone circle, 2 souls bound by curse and freed by love remained, beginning the first moments of a new life neither had dared to hope for. Spring came to the Virginia forests with a gentleness that seemed almost apologetic after the harsh winter. Wildflowers carpeted the clearings in cascades of white and purple. Birds returned to fill the canopy with song, and the streams ran clear and cold with snowmelt from distant mountains. It was a season of renewal, and it seemed fitting for 2 souls who had themselves been reborn. Marcia and Cassian had not gone to the capital. The summons to serve in the emperor's hospitals lay forgotten, abandoned on a road that now seemed to belong to another life entirely. Instead, they had traveled deeper into the wilderness, following paths known only to hunters and wanderers, until they found a place where the forest opened into a hidden valley, untouched by Rome's expanding reach. There, beside a lake so clear it reflected the sky like polished silver, they built a small cabin from timber and stone. Cassian threw himself into the work with enthusiasm that spoke of a man rediscovering the joy of creation after years of destruction. His hands, once marked by curse, now shaped wood and fitted stones, building something that would endure. Marcia established her healing practice among the scattered settlements that dotted the wilderness. Tiny villages of trappers, farmers who had fled the empire's taxes, and native tribes who remembered the old ways. Word spread quickly of the healer who asked no payment beyond what people could afford, whose remedies seemed touched by something beyond mere skill. What the people did not know was that the curse had not entirely left them. The wolf was gone, yes. Cassian would never again transform against his will, but the bond between them remained, and with it came something unexpected. On nights when the moon was full, Cassian could choose to take wolf form. Not the tortured transformation of the curse, but a willing shift that came as naturally as breathing. In those moments he was fully himself, man and wolf together, conscious and in control. The first time it happened, 3 months after the curse broke, they had both been terrified. But as Cassian stood on 4 legs in the moonlight, Marcia heard his voice clear in her mind. "I am still here, still myself, but I can choose this now." "Why would you choose it?" she had asked. "Because it is part of who I am now," Cassian had replied through their bond. "The curse taught me to see the world through different eyes. To reject it entirely would be to reject those lessons. This way, I can use what I learned without being consumed by it. So they learned to navigate this new reality together. During the day, Cassian was fully human, hunting, building, helping Marcia tend to patients. But when the full moon rose, he would transform and run through the forests with joy that was beautiful to witness, free at last from pain and curse. And Marcia would sometimes ride on his back as they traversed vast distances in a single night, the bond between them allowing her to see through his eyes, to experience the world as he did, every scent sharp and meaningful, the forest alive in ways human senses could never fully grasp. Travelers who passed through the region began to speak of strange sightings, a healer who lived deep in the forest, a man who walked beside her, and sometimes a great silver wolf that seemed to guard their home. The stories grew with each telling, embroidered with details both true and imagined. They said the healer could cure any ailment, that she had learned her arts from the gods themselves. They said the man had once been a great warrior, cursed for his violence, redeemed by love. They said the wolf was either guardian or familiar, or the man himself transformed, depending on who told the tale. One evening in late summer, an old woman arrived at their cabin. She was bent with age, her face mapped with wrinkles, her eyes clouded with cataracts. But she moved with certainty of one who knew exactly where she was going. Marcia welcomed her, offering water and rest. The woman settled into a chair, her gnarled hands wrapped around a cup of herbal tea. "You are the healer who saved the wolf of the valley," she said. Marcia and Cassian exchanged glances. "That was more than a year ago," Marcia said carefully. "How do you know of it?" The old woman smiled. "Because I was the one who cursed him." Cassian went still, his hand moving toward his knife. But the woman raised a placating hand. "Peace, warrior. I come not to harm, but to see what has become of my working." "You cursed me," Cassian said, his voice tight. "You took 7 years of my life. I gave you 7 years to learn what you would not learn in battle." The woman interrupted gently. "You slaughtered my village. You killed my daughter, my grandchildren, my neighbors. What punishment would have been sufficient? Death is easy. Death teaches nothing." She leaned forward. "I cursed you to become the beast you already were, so that you might understand what it means to be hunted, to be feared. I made it possible for the curse to break, but only if you could find someone who would see past the beast, and only if you could believe yourself worthy of salvation." 7 years, Cassian repeated, his voice breaking. 7 years for 7 lives, the old woman said. 1 year for each of my family members you killed. It was just, even if it was not kind. She looked at him with something like approval. "You have made a life built on healing rather than harming. You have learned to control the beast within. The curse is ended, and my debt to the dead is paid." She rose slowly. "Live your lives. Do good where you can. Remember that redemption is not given but earned, day by day, choice by choice." She paused at the door. "And know that my daughter, before she died, asked me to show mercy to her killer. This curse was that mercy. A chance to become more than you were. Do not waste it." Then she was gone, disappearing into the twilight, leaving them alone with their choices. Years passed, marked by changing seasons. The cabin by the lake became a place of legend, a destination for those who needed healing of body or spirit. Marcia's skill grew until it seemed almost magical. Cassian became the guardian of the valley, protecting travelers, using his strength now to preserve life rather than take it. They never married formally, never stood before priest or magistrate, but they were bound more deeply than any ceremony could achieve, their souls intertwined by curse and choice, by suffering shared and overcome. They were partners in the truest sense, each making the other stronger. Travelers remarked that neither seemed to age in the normal way. Years passed, but Marcia's face remained unlined. Cassian's body stayed strong, the golden gleam never fading from his eyes. Some whispered that the curse had left them not quite human, touched by magic that granted extended life. The truth was that the bond between them had become something more than either curse or blessing. It was a connection that transcended normal boundaries of human life. They could have released it, could have severed the thread, and returned to mortal existence, but neither wished to. The bond that had begun as punishment had become their greatest treasure, and so they remained, season after season, year after year, becoming first a story, then a legend, then a myth. The healer and the wolf, some called them. The details changed with each telling, but the heart remained constant. A tale of mercy and redemption, of curse become blessing, of two souls who found in each other the salvation neither thought possible. On certain full moon nights, travelers through the Virginia forests would glimpse them, a woman walking through moonlit glades, and beside her a great silver wolf, moving together in perfect harmony. Those who saw them spoke of feeling peace, as if witnessing something sacred. The empire rose and fell, but the story endured. And in the hidden valley beside the Silver Lake, where wildflowers bloomed eternal and the forest sang its ancient songs, the healer and the wolf remained, a testament to the power of mercy, the possibility of redemption, and the truth that even the darkest curse can be transformed by love into the greatest blessing.